Outer Space is the new theme for March 2024, and we have 4 new space skins and a space scenery. I'm going to break down all their details in this video. The Space Queen is going to be our Gold Pass skin for this month, obviously coming out on March 1st, and she's going to be available on the first tier of the Gold Pass. You might also notice if you've never bought the Gold Pass before, there's going to be a discount for your first time ever buying the Gold Pass. The normal price of the Gold Pass is well worth the money, and this is even more worth the money. So if you were ever thinking about buying the Gold Pass, now you'll get a discount the first time you buy it. You'll be able to test all these skins for the next 9 days in the challenge that we have going on in game, and we're gonna have challenges later on this month, so you'll most likely also be able to test out the skins in those challenges as well. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see everything about all of these space skins because they have certain gear equipped, and the King, for example, does not have the Barbarian puppet equipped, nor does the Queen have the Archer puppet equipped, so you won't be able to see any custom troops that they may have. But spoiler alert, when we get to the King, you're gonna see you're not missing out on a lot. But for the Space Queen, one of the things you're gonna miss is the attacking effects because she's using the frozen arrow equipment, and that overrides any custom effects that she would have. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts on the topic of how equipment is actually hurting skins, I made a video on that. And I'm about to give my opinion and details on the Space Queen, but before that, I just want to give a general opinion on the space set as a whole. Now, this set is a really solid skin set. I really like the design of these skins. I like how they have a decent amount of detail, but they're not over the top. I generally like simple skins, but I don't like them too simple, and the space skins strike that balance very well. I do like a lot of their animations and effects. There are a few, which we'll talk about later, which could be changed. As a whole, these skins are A tier skins. They're not my absolute favorite set, so they're definitely not going to be in the S tier, but they're really solid, but they do have some cons for sure. As I was looking at this set, they feel a little bit lower effort than some other skin sets we've got. Again, they're still really good skins, but there are some things that they reused from previous skins. For example, the magic set has the sparkle effects that are constantly coming off of them. It looks like they just copy and pasted that onto these space skins. Now, most people probably wouldn't notice or care about that, but I analyze skins all the time, so I do notice it. There are also some sound effects they reused, and I'll get into that in more detail as we look at each individual skin. And just reusing things isn't the only low effort thing I noticed. It seems like a lot of the animations are shorter. When I look at these skins, I just get that vibe that they're a little bit lower effort. But again, I'm gonna go back to saying that they are still really solid skins, just not the best that Clash of Clans has ever done. I really like the Space Queen's design. Instead of an Expo, she has this kind of satellite gun, and when you don't have her frozen arrow equipped, she shoots custom shots, and she has a ton of custom sound effects. This is a random side note, but when I hear the Queen's attacking sound effect, it sounds exactly like Buzz's whistle from Brawl Stars. I don't know how many of you play Brawl Stars, but that was just something that caught my attention. When I selected her, her animation was a lot shorter than I expected. Still a really solid animation. I like how the animations show that they're in very low gravity, like they're on the moon or something, especially their walking animations. I love to see them walking around and kind of hopping through the air, floating for a little bit before they land again. It's a really fun aspect of these skins, how they feel like they're in low gravity. Now, I'm gonna point out some cons of the Queen now because I don't want to end on a negative note, but the only con I really noticed about her, it may not even be a con to you, it actually might be a pro, but when she gets knocked out, first of all, when you hear her sound effect, it sounds like she's gasping for air, and then you see when she's knocked out that she's like struggling to breathe, even though she's still inside her helmet, but it's like a panic-inducing animation when you see someone struggling for air. I don't know why they decided to do this, and one of the other skins actually has a really similar animation and actually more intense than the Queen, but to me, I cannot watch this animation for any longer than a few seconds. It just kind of gives me anxiety. I really like the stars theme and a bit of electricity in their visual effects. She shoots stars, there's little sparkles that fly off of her shots as they go through the air. Of course, she's a Gold Pass skin, so she's not going to be spawning custom archers. That would have been so fun to see little archers with their spacesuits on. Overall, this is a really solid Gold Pass skin. The space scenery is going to be the second cosmetic that comes out in March. It's coming out on March 5th. There's no change to the price. It's going to be $6.99 just like all the other sceneries. Now, just looking at this overall, I really like the dark color of the scenery, but it's not too dark. Like the shadow scenery might be a bit too dark. This one is a really nice balance. Now, the biggest problem I see with with this scenery is that it's just so empty. There's only a few things on this. I'm just gonna call this the moon scenery, or the moon. There's a little thing in the top left, a little thing in the top right, some stuff on the bottom left, and then almost nothing on the bottom right. It is so empty. I think the most empty scenery we've ever gotten. This is another reason why when I was talking about low effort at the beginning of the video, it feels like this is kind of low effort because they just have this giant rock. They just have a piece of the moon and then nothing else, pretty much. Somebody's gonna argue that they're just trying to be realistic because there's nothing on the moon, so why would they put more than they need to in this scenery? Well, first of all, they didn't specify it was the moon, and Clash of Clans is not realistic, so that's a terrible argument. But looking at what they do have, I really like the design. They've got this little rover driving around on the moon. Eventually he comes over to the right side of the scenery and there's this action scene that happens where two goblins drive up on these space bikes and they start shooting at the rover and the rover shoots back, but then it's kind of weird how it ends because the rover stops, the goblin stops, and then they just kind of cruise off together as if nothing ever happened. So I don't know if they're enemies or if this was like a practice fight scene. I don't know what was happening, but it is kind of cool. On the left side, there's some kind of little village with a few houses and a few what look like little things where they grow plants in. It looks like they're mining something from the moon. Maybe it's dark elixir. It's definitely the color of dark elixir. In the top right, we have this giant space drill, I'm thinking it is, and they're going down into this pool of what looks like dark elixir. I really like the border that they put around the village, the pipes that go all around the perimeter. It's kind of cool, and it gives a nice separation between where your village is and where the outside of the scenery is. One of my favorite things about this scenery is this goblin that goes swimming by. It's not realistic because, well, I'm not even gonna explain it. It's too nerdy. You can go to Mark Rober for that explanation, but it's just funny that the goblin is swimming through the air even though there's no air in space. Oh, I almost forgot. I need to show you guys, we have the first ever fully custom forge and the first fully custom airship. That means the scenery is fully loaded. There's custom music, there's a parallax effect, there's custom tiles, custom airship, custom forge, and a custom boat. And I will say, I love the custom forge and the custom airship. They fit the scenery perfectly. They look so clean. And I think there's also the factor of them being new and we've never seen them fully custom like this, but I hope that they continue doing this with sceneries. Before this, the closest we ever got was the Dragon Palace scenery, and I guess the Pixel scenery, but in the Dragon Palace scenery, we had those bubbles around the forge and airship. Here's also the custom boat. Looks pretty cool. It's some kind of spaceship with landing gear that looks like skis. I'm playing the custom music in the background, but you can also go over to E12 Dragon's channel and he always posts the full-length music for every single scenery. Overall, really solid, and it's hard to say that you're not gonna get value from this scenery because it's fully loaded as far as the features go, but it is so empty. So if you don't mind an empty scenery, then go for it. But it's hard to recommend when it's so empty, but it's also got all the features. The Space King is the third cosmetic we're getting on March 7th, only 2 days after the scenery. He's gonna be a legendary skin costing $9.99. All right, I'm gonna address the thumbnail right off the bat, but also cross my fingers and hope this was just a mistake in the dev build and in the real game that it actually plays out to not be true. But he does not spawn any custom barbarians. This is less significant now because of equipment and not many people using the barbarian puppet, but still, he's legendary. He should be spawning custom barbarians, and especially for space barbarians, I feel like they would look so cute with their little helmets on. I just hope that when the king actually comes out and we can see him in the live game, that he's gonna spawn custom barbs. Now, another con with the Space King is they reused some sound effects from previous skins in his selection animation. And also when he attacks, there's kind of a default sound effect that the king has when he hits with his sword. They also just reused that on the Space King. This doesn't bother me as much anymore. I feel like it's okay to reuse a few aspects, a few small aspects of other skins, because I understand as a creator that I make templates and then just reuse them when I make other videos. Now, this isn't a one-to-one comparison, but I think it's okay to reuse work that you've done in the future. Of course, it's always nice to that have 100% unique sound effects, but I'm just pointing this out in case it does bother someone. The Space King is almost my favorite, but I think the King is my second favorite, right below the Warden. I like the way the King walks a little bit more than the Queen. They all still have that similar walk where they're in a low gravity environment, but the King's just looks really clean, and I think it's my favorite walking animation out of the Space Skins. When he attacks, he also has custom visual effects. It's again kind of that star/electricity visual effects that this skin set has. He feels like a pretty standard legendary skin, maybe a bit below average as far as the amount of visual effects and sound effects and animations he has. It also looks like the knockout stars that go around the hero's head are a little bit misaligned. Again, I hope this is just a mistake in the dev build. I appreciate how they didn't replicate the Queen's knockout animation with the King. He's not gasping for air, other than a little bit dazed from getting knocked out. He doesn't have a panic-inducing knockout animation. The Space Warden is going to be available on March 14th. He's also a legendary skin. He's going to cost $9.99. As I mentioned a second ago, this one is my favorite design. I really like his mustache and his goatee. I feel like people will find that ugly, but I actually really like it. I'm curious why this skin doesn't match his typical color design. Maybe because the Queen has the purplish color design, they wanted to make him totally separate, but they went with a dark blue instead of his typical purplish pink design. Instead of his staff, he has a flag, which is a reference probably to the flag that's planted on the moon, and then he spawns a star instead of his book. I like that rocket he has on his back. I feel like the Warden is gonna be your best value skin out of this set, just because of the things that the King is missing, and the fact that the Warden has custom animations and effects for both ground and air. So you're basically getting double the value, but for the same price as any other skin. I don't think these walking animations are ever gonna get old. The Warden seems to be moving his legs a lot faster and not quite as good as the King's walking animation, but still, I'm gonna show these for every single skin. Of course, when he's set to air though, he's pretty much just hovering. He has some extra visual effects that the other skins don't have. The orb has this pinkish glow effect where these sparkles come off of it, but it only seems like this happens when he's attacking. When he's just flying or walking, there's no pink coming off of the orb. The Warden has much more of an electrical attack effect rather than the star attack effects that the other skins have. And here's the con of the Warden, and what I alluded to earlier, his entire helmet falls off his head when he gets knocked out, and he is clearly gasping for air. He cannot breathe at all. Obviously, there's no air in space, and this is worse than the Queen's knockout animation. Let me know in a comment if these knockout animations bother you at all. And if you're worried about it, you can just set your Warden to air because he has a totally different knockout animation. This one, his helmet doesn't fall off. And again, there's a little bug where the knockout stars are rotating through his head instead of above his head. Hopefully they fix that. And of course, we're getting the Space Champion as the last skin of the month. She's coming out on March 21st. She's a legendary skin costing $9.99. The only cons I can say about this skin is she's probably the worst value you're gonna get. I noticed she didn't have a lot of custom sound effects. She does have quite a few visual effects, and of course, like pretty much every single skin, she has 100% custom animations. Besides missing quite a few effects, this skin is really solid. I love in her selection animation how her staff pops out of the little UFO, which is her shield. That's really fun to watch the first time you see this skin because you don't know where her spear is gonna come from, and then it just pops out. She probably has my favorite pose animation where she does the backflip floating in the air. That one is the best for sure. And this design is probably my least favorite, but of course she fits really well in the set. And I also just noticed that her color scheme is pretty much the same as the Warden's color scheme. So my theory earlier about setting the Warden apart from the other skins just got busted because this one matches the Warden. Her walking animation is closer to the default walking animation where she's not hopping as much as the other three skins, which is unfortunate because I really like that hopping animation. Her attacking animation is one of my favorites. She throws this shooting star looking spear, and then her ability is instead of her shield, it's throwing stars again. It's kind of funny how instead of using her shield and spear, whenever she throws an attack or ability, it's a star instead. The knockout animation is pretty standard. She's sitting there holding her head and then her staff spins next to her. Overall, I think this set is really solid. Like I said, it is an A tier set. What do you think about the space skins and scenery? Let me know in a comment.